I came home early from a work trip. My clothes were gone. My photos erased. My mother-in-law sat in my chair and said, "This house needed purging." My husband didn't say a word. He handed me a list of new rules she wrote. I laughed then, but 2 months later, her voice shook when she read the new name on the deed. My name's Carla. I'm 42, a project manager for a logistics company based in Indianapolis. I've been married to Brandon for 8 years. We never had kids, mostly because we kept saying, "Next year." And now, well, you'll see. Brandon was my second husband. My first marriage ended in my 20s when I found my ex in bed with his coworker. I told myself I'd never be that blind again. I took my time with Brandon, dated 4 years, lived together for 1, and finally said yes after he proposed during a weekend trip to the Smoky Mountains. He had charm, sure, but what really hooked me was how quiet he seemed. Reliable, grounded, no drama. He worked for the city's water department, fixed things, mowed the lawn every Saturday. Seemed like someone who wanted peace, not chaos. I never really liked his mom, though. Her name's Patricia. She's one of those small-town Indiana moms who believes she should still be running her son's life well into his 40s. Brandon's her only child. Her miracle baby, she calls him. She grew up in Terre Haute, never worked, lived off alimony and disability for most of her life. The kind of woman who insists you call before visiting, but she'll show up at your house uninvited and start rearranging your fridge. For the first few years of my marriage, I tried to be polite. I hosted her. I invited her to birthdays, to Christmas. I made her special gluten-free meals because she claimed everything made her sick. I let her take my spot on the couch. I even let her bring her ugly cat when she came for the weekend. I did my best to be the good wife, the one who never complained. But there was something else. Something subtle. She'd always make these little comments. "It's funny how Brandon used to like women with long blonde hair. I'm brunette." Or, Brandon always said he didn't want a working wife. I make twice what Brandon does. One time she actually said, while folding laundry at our house, "Well, these don't look like the kind of underwear my son would have picked for you." I laughed it off, but later that night, I asked Brandon to set some boundaries. He said, "She's just old school, and it's not worth the fight." That was always his answer. Not worth the fight. Until it was. It started with a work trip to Cincinnati. 3 nights. I'd gone before. No big deal. I got home earlier than expected. Took an earlier train back. I didn't call because I figured I'd surprise Brandon. Maybe we'd grab Thai and watch a movie. When I walked into my house at 3 p.m. on a Friday, everything felt off. There was no hour anymore. My keys still worked. But the moment I opened the door, it felt like I didn't belong. There were no shoes by the door. No jacket on the hook. The couch had new cushions. Our wedding photo was gone, replaced by a painting of a goddamn field of lilies. And Patricia, was sitting in my recliner. My spot. My brown leather chair. She had a mug in her hand, like she'd lived there all her life. Looked up at me, like I was interrupting her afternoon, and I'll never forget what she said. This house needed purging. I stood frozen, thought maybe I'd walked into the wrong house. Then Brandon came out of the hallway, holding a stack of paper. He didn't hug me, didn't ask why I was early. He just handed me the papers, typed, stapled, a title at the top. Household Expectations, Revised Edition. I opened it. The first line, Carla will no longer store her work clothes in the master bedroom. Then, Patricia may use the master bath when needed. And, meal plans must be reviewed and approved by Patricia before Sunday night. I looked at Brandon, thought he was joking. He wasn't. He stood there, arms folded like a manager delivering bad news to a temp. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so insane I couldn't even be mad yet. I asked where my clothes were. He said, "Donated." He said Patricia had helped clean out the clutter. My jewelry. My old photos. Gone. I walked into the bedroom, and it looked like a damn hotel. No trace of me. No scent. No shoes. Patricia's robe was on the back of the door. Her stupid cat was on my pillow. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked out, got in my car, and drove straight to my friend Jenny's house. Jenny was my maid of honor. She lives out in Carmel, in a townhouse with her girlfriend. I showed up at her door in work slacks and sneakers and said, "Can I stay a few days?" She didn't ask questions. That night, I cried. Hard. Over the next 2 months, I kept my cool. I met with a lawyer. I pulled copies of our mortgage and found something interesting. The deed was in both our names, but most of the payments came from my account. In fact, I'd paid the down payment with money from my first marriage's settlement. That's right. My name was on that house. And in Indiana, joint property doesn't just get given away because your husband lost his balls. So I started planning. I didn't tell Brandon I was filing for divorce. Not yet. I told him I needed space. He texted once. "Let me know when you're ready to talk like adults." I didn't respond. He emailed a week later asking if I still had tax documents. Meanwhile, Patricia started making social posts. Stupid ones. A selfie on my porch with the caption, "New Beginnings." Another one inside my kitchen. Some women bake. Some just know how to run a home. She tagged Brandon in every photo. My friends started texting, asking what was going on. I stayed quiet, because revenge doesn't yell. It waits. 2 months after I walked out, I went back to that house. But this time, with a sheriff's deputy and 2 moving trucks. Brandon wasn't home. Patricia was. She opened the door wearing my old robe, that same mug in her hand. "You're not welcome here," she snapped. I handed her the copy of the court order. I had full legal access to the property and the right to reclaim all jointly owned assets. Patricia stood there, lips twitching. She tried to call Brandon. He didn't answer. We started packing. I took every single thing that was mine, and a few things that weren't, just for the hell of it. My mother's armoire, the cast iron set I bought with my first paycheck, the TV, the rug. When Brandon came home 2 hours later, he saw the trucks out front. He rushed in, started yelling. I didn't flinch. I just handed him an envelope. Inside, divorce papers and a notice from my lawyer. "We intend to file for exclusive ownership of the house based on financial contributions and misconduct." Brandon looked stunned. Then Patricia said something I'll never forget. "This is my house now. We don't need her." I turned to her. "Come. Cold. Check the new deed." She looked confused. I'd refinanced. Quietly. Bought Brandon out. He didn't even realize what he'd signed during a temporary separation agreement. He wanted quick cash. I gave it to him. And now, the house was mine. I moved back in. Patricia had a week to vacate. She cried, literally sobbed on the porch as her son loaded her things into his rusted Tacoma, said I'd tricked them, said I was soulless. I didn't argue, didn't speak, just stood there, holding the new keys, watching them leave. Brandon moved into a cheap rental near his job. I found out later Patricia had a meltdown at the DMV when she tried to update her address and found out her license had expired. Then her cat got sick. She tried to ask me for help with vet bills. I blocked her number. Brandon texted me, "You didn't have to go nuclear." I replied, "You handed me a list of rules like I was a guest in my own life." He never responded. 3 weeks after I moved back in, it finally hit me I was alone. Not lonely exactly, but alone in a house that once smelled like 2 people living a quiet life. Now it just smelled like Lysol and hardwood. The silence felt heavier than I expected. For 8 years, even during the worst of it, Brandon was around. His footsteps, the sound of the shower running too long, his stupid football game yelling. Now just me. But that wasn't the twist. No, the twist came one morning, about 5:45 a.m., when I was pouring coffee and noticed the garage light was on. I hadn't been in the garage since the movers packed everything. Figure it was a sensor. I walked out in slippers, flicked the switch, and nearly screamed. Brandon was in the garage, sleeping on an old army cot, a rolled-up sleeping bag, a duffel bag, a damn bag of Doritos next to his shoes. He bolted upright like he'd been caught stealing. What the hell? I snapped. What are you doing here? His eyes were sunken, pale. He looked like he hadn't shaved in a week. I didn't want to bother you, he muttered. I didn't have anywhere to go last night. I stared, stunned. You broke into my house. I still had the code, he said, like that made it okay. I changed the locks that day, added cameras, called my lawyer, but it didn't stop there. Turns out, Brandon was worse off than I thought. After our split, he'd maxed out his credit card renting a truck and helping his mom move. Then he lost hours at work when he took time off to handle legal stuff, which meant less pay, which meant late rent, which meant 3 weeks later he got evicted. And guess where he went? Back to Patricia's place in Terre Haute. Except, surprise, she didn't want him there either. She'd moved into a senior living apartment where pets weren't allowed. And remember her cat? Yeah, he died. The vet bills wiped out what little she had left in her bank account. Patricia blamed Brandon for everything. She said I'd tricked him, that he'd betrayed her by signing anything I put in front of him. They fought. Loud. Public. One night I got a call from Jenny, who said she saw Patricia posting on Facebook. She was ranting. Some women are snakes. They steal your son, your house, your life. But karma always comes. I didn't reply, but I watched. Then came the call that changed everything. A woman named Tasha left a message on my work phone. Said she was from the Indiana Family Welfare Department. Said they had an open case involving Patricia. Apparently, someone had reported her for elder endangerment and coercion of a dependent adult. I froze. Turns out, Brandon had a small pension from an injury settlement he got years back after falling off a worksite ladder. Monthly payments. Nothing big. Well, Patricia had been using his identity, pulling money from his account, applying for credit cards, even submitting paperwork under his name to get housing assistance. And now, they were investigating. At first, I didn't want to be involved. Then Brandon called. It was the first time I heard his voice, not laced with smugness or fake confidence. Carla, he said quietly, can we talk? Please. We met at a diner. He looked 10 years older than the man I married. Pale, gaunt, like he hadn't eaten a solid meal in days. He admitted everything, said he'd been brainwashed, that his mom convinced him she was entitled to everything. My clothes, my kitchen, even our damn marriage bed. She said you were temporary, he whispered. She told me you'd leave one day, like everyone else. I listened. Then I leaned forward and asked, did you ever love me? Or was it always just you and your mother against the world? He didn't answer, just looked down. I'm homeless, he said. I sleep in my truck. I didn't blink. He tried to ask for money. I gave him a number, not of my bank account, but of a shelter on East 10th Street. Then I got up and walked out. But Patricia didn't stop. She sent me letters, real ones, in cursive, thick, angry ink. You ruined him, she wrote. He was everything until you poisoned him. She showed up at my mailbox twice. Once left a dead bouquet with a card. Rot in your empty house. I filed a restraining order. Got it granted. The judge, a calm older man with glasses too big for his face, looked at her and said, Ma'am, you've crossed every line imaginable. She tried to scream, got escorted out, and that was the last I saw her in person. But the fallout kept going. My job put me on leave after the police showed up at work to confirm details of the restraining order. I got called into HR, had to explain everything. Jenny offered to have me move in for a while, but I said no. This was my house. So I stayed. Just me. And the silence. And the echoes of a marriage that was never really mine. 3 weeks later, my lawyer called me. "I need you to come into the office," she said. Now, I thought it was just paperwork. Maybe something about the restraining order or finalizing asset division. But when I got there, she slid a manila folder across the table and said, "Your ex-husband and his mother are trying to contest the house transfer." I blinked. On what grounds? She flipped the folder open. Fraud and undue influence. I almost laughed. He signed the papers willingly. He needed the money. She nodded. I know. And we have all the documentation. But they're claiming you manipulated him. That you timed everything while he was emotionally vulnerable. Then she looked up and said something that made my chest tighten. They hired a lawyer. And not just any lawyer. Patricia's brother. I hadn't heard that name in years. Wayne, her older brother. A retired cop turned ambulance chaser attorney who still worked out of some backroom office in Terre Haute. I remembered him from our wedding. He sat in the back row, arms crossed the whole time, like he was attending a trial, not a celebration. Apparently, he'd taken the case for free. Family honor, he said in a court filing. They wanted the house back. Claimed Patricia had established residency and was evicted illegally. Claimed Brandon was mentally coerced. It was insane, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't shake me, because now I had to go back to court. Now everything, the affair-level betrayal, the personal humiliation, the anger, would get dragged out in front of strangers. The first hearing was short. Patricia showed up in all black, like she was attending a funeral. She even wore a little lace veil. Brandon walked in behind her like a beaten dog. He wouldn't look at me. Their lawyer, Uncle Wayne, stood up and said, "This woman systematically dismantled a family structure under the guise of a legal agreement." My lawyer stood up and calmly said, "We have receipts, signed documents, and bank records proving the opposite." The judge set a full hearing for a month out, which gave them a month to dig into my life. And they did. It started with Facebook posts, old photos of me and my first husband, comments like, "She's done this before." Then came a string of fake Yelp reviews on my company's profile, accusing me of verbal abuse and fraud. Then, my boss called me into his office. "There's someone who keeps calling reception, asking if you've ever been disciplined for emotional instability." He looked uncomfortable. "They won't leave a name." I knew who it was. Patricia. Or Wayne. Or both. Then one night, around 11:30 p.m., my motion sensor camera caught something. A figure, cloaked in a hoodie, standing on my porch. Just standing there, staring at the door, then walking away. Didn't knock. Didn't try the handle. Just stood. The footage made my blood run cold. I called the cops. Again. They increased patrol in my neighborhood, but nothing ever stuck. No proof it was Brandon. Just suspicion. Constant, itching suspicion. The stress wore me down. I lost 10 pounds. Started grinding my teeth at night. My therapist put me on anxiety meds for the first time in my life. Jenny started coming by just to check in. One night she asked, "You ever think about just selling the house? Starting fresh?" I looked around. At the walls I repainted, the photos I rehung, the closet I restocked with my own clothes. "No," I said. "They took everything from me once. They're not getting the house." Then came the second court date. The judge asked for statements from both sides. Brandon stood up first. His voice shook. I didn't know what I was signing. I just wanted peace. I didn't realize I was giving up everything. Then Patricia stood up. She pulled out a Bible, held it in her hand while she spoke. "This woman corrupted my son. She isolated him. She threw away our family. I lived in that house. I cleaned it. I made it a home again." Then the judge turned to me. I stood up. I spoke plainly. I worked for that house. I paid for it. I kept it standing. I put up with the insults, the gaslighting, the lies. I gave Brandon 8 years. He gave me a roommate named Patricia and a stack of rules like I was the help. I took a deep breath. And when I finally walked away, they tried to paint me as a monster for setting boundaries. That's what this is. Punishment. Because I dared to walk. The judge didn't say much, just nodded and said he'd issue a decision in 10 days. That week, something changed. The mail stopped showing up. I found out later. Someone put a temporary vacation hold on my address through the USPS website. It wasn't me. Then my bank flagged a suspicious attempt to access my online account. Patricia again. Brandon? I couldn't prove it, but I documented everything. 10 days later, the judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. Fully. Permanently. He cited documentation, financial contributions, and Brandon's willful consent. He dismissed Patricia's claims with prejudice. That meant they couldn't bring it up again. Ever. I sat there in the courtroom, hands clenched, waiting for it to hit me. It didn't feel like a win. Not yet. Brandon walked out without a word. Patricia stared at me, eyes full of venom. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered. I didn't reply, because I did know. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because what I didn't know was that Patricia had already set her next move in motion. She wasn't done. And the next hit would come from someone I never saw coming. About a month after the court ruling, things started to feel normal again. The air in the house shifted, lighter. I could breathe. I went back to work full-time. Even started thinking about repainting the master bedroom. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Raina Dawson. The name didn't ring a bell at first. Her message said, "Hi Carla. I think we should talk. I believe we have a connection through Brandon." I felt a twist in my gut. I replied, careful with my words. She gave me her number. We talked that night. Turns out Raina had been dating Brandon for over a year. He'd told her I was separated from him but emotionally abusive, that I wouldn't sign divorce papers, that he was trapped. She was 33, a single mom with a 5-year-old daughter. "I just found out he was married to you the whole time," she said. He met her at a city maintenance site when she was doing contract work for the parks department. She believed everything he told her. He stayed over, took her daughter to the park, met her parents, said he was getting his life back together. Then 2 weeks after he lost the case, he ghosted her. She thought maybe he'd had a breakdown. But then she found me. When she told me all this, I went silent. "Are you okay?" she asked. I answered with a question of my own. Did he ever bring up his mother? There was a pause. Then, yeah, a lot. Turns out Patricia knew about Raina. From the beginning. She encouraged it. Said Raina was a better fit than me. Told Brandon to build a backup life. Patricia even met Raina's daughter. Held her. Brought her little gifts. It made my stomach turn. Not because of the cheating, but because of the delusion. Patricia truly believed Brandon was some broken king, and she was rebuilding his throne. But karma works slow, and when it hits from the side. A week later, Raina filed a police report against Brandon. Why? Because she found out he used her daughter's social security number to open a credit card. He'd used it to buy tools, truck parts, and, get this, a used hot tub. Police took the report seriously. Fraud involving a minor. That's felony territory. Then Raina sent me screenshots of texts, emails, his fake job applications using his daughter's info, photos of receipts with her address. She forwarded everything to the police and to child services. Within a month, Brandon was charged with 2 counts of identity theft and 1 of fraud. He was arrested in front of a gas station on the south side of Indy. I saw the mugshot online. Unshaved, red-eyed, hollow. And Patricia? She tried to start a GoFundMe. No one donated. She went on Facebook, rambling about how Raina was a liar and I was the serpent that destroyed her family. But no one bought it. Friends she'd had for years unfriended her. Brandon pled guilty to avoid trial. Got 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. He's now banned from holding any financial accounts without supervision. Raina filed a restraining order and cut all contact. She moved to Illinois. Patricia tried to visit him in jail. He refused to see her. And me? I sold the house 6 months later. Not because I was scared anymore, but because I was free. The house was never the prize. It was the battleground. I took the profits, bought a condo downtown. Bright, modern, quiet. One night, Jenny came over for wine and I told her everything. She shook her head, mouth open. How did you survive all that? I said, I stopped needing closure. People always think revenge is fire and glass, screaming matches and final punches. But real revenge, it's leaving them with exactly what they chose and letting them rot in it. Brandon wanted a house ruled by his mother. He got homelessness and a criminal record. Patricia wanted control. She got loneliness and public disgrace. They didn't just lose me. They lost the illusion they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. That's what revenge is. Letting the truth live longer than the lie.